it, I'm blessed. It's a few L's and millions, so turn that loss to a...
Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
I'm so glad that you're here.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so for those that don't know who you are, I know we've gotten to know each other a little bit.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I've always been really impressed just with your professionalism. And, I think that, at least in my experience, there's such a low barrier to entry for real estate and lending.
So true.
And so unfortunately, and I think anybody should have the ability to change their life and make more money and go into whatever business they choose. However, because of that, you end up with a lot of people that don't have that professionalism, that really don't know what they're doing in this industry. And thankfully, you're not one of them. And I've had the pleasure of working with you now with several clients. And you've been fantastic. And I've always just appreciated your honesty. And I think your clients appreciate that as well. So,
well, thank you. That's a big part of what I do and what drives me.
Yeah. So tell everybody who Kelly Mehta is.
Yeah, so Kelly Mehta, that's a great question. I am born and raised here in Colorado, southeast Denver. And
that's rare.
I know, it's super rare nowadays.
Uh-huh.
When I was growing up, there wasn't anybody from anywhere else, maybe California. But nowadays, it's rare to find us natives.
So southeast Denver, you mean like
Tech Center, Tech Center area, Greenwood Village, Englewood, that area. And grew up here, had a great childhood. I loved growing up in Colorado. And then left for college, thinking that I would probably never be back. Denver always seemed like a little too small to be a big city, a little too big to be a small city. I lived many places. I was gone for, a good 15 years. Lived in New York City for a decade, and met my husband in New York City. I feel like Denver got a little cooler and I got a little less cool. Kind of met in the middle. At this point, I think Denver's maybe out past me. It's way cooler than I am, that's for sure. But moved back about 7 years ago, ready to kind of start with the kids and make this home. And it's great. It's great to be back.
How did you meet your husband?
Actually, online dating.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I like to think of it as the golden age of online dating because it was before smartphones. So there was no swiping. Wow. So it was
that's
intentional. But
so like BlackBerry, you're using a BlackBerry?
No, not even a BlackBerry. Just like a cell phone.
Really?
And I'd log into a computer to online dates.
Do you remember the old AOL? In the background?
Yeah, and yeah, definitely.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. Online dating, what an interesting.
I know.
It's amazing because I've heard so many stories, and I've done the online dating thing as well.
Yeah.
And,
I hated it, but.
But it's really bizarre, there's always like that one person that looks attractive, you go meet and they're totally different than what their photo shows. You're like, really, come on, man.
Chemistry's a thing. There's they may hit all the boxes and then you're like, no, or vice versa. I was his first date, so he lucked out. That's the joke. Exactly, right?
Cool. Okay. And that was, so 7 years ago you came here.
Right.
What kind of work were you in at the time?
Before I was in real estate, I was in education, doing experiential education, some more like hands-on learning stuff, outdoor adventure, camp programs, cultural exchange, study abroad, that type of thing. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing. The individuals I've met that have had a background in education seem to do well with real estate. I don't know. What do you think?
Real estate is education. I mean, you have to know what you're talking about and be able to teach that to your clients and make them feel comfortable, hold their hands a little bit sometimes and meet them where they're at and kind of get them to figure out what makes the most sense for them in their situation. It's very similar to education. And when I was in education, I was more on the admin side, so I was dealing a lot with adults too, and facilitating adults, facilitating children. So it's a lot about just coaching and getting people comfortable, and it was a good fit for me. I was a psychology major in college, not that I ever thought I would do anything with psychology, but it comes in handy every single day.
Especially in real estate,
Yeah,
right?
very much so.
Well, you're dealing with with arguably one of the most stressful periods of time in anybody's life, transition.
For sure.
Right? There's change, and when there's change, a lot of times that can be uncomfortable. There's a lot of movement. They might be selling a house, or maybe they're buying a house for the first time and currently renting, but they have to move. And there's so much that goes into it that you sometimes do have to play therapist.
100%. And it also comes in handy working with other agents and with the inspection, because you know how to negotiate, because you're able to read other people and figure out what is the motivation that's going to get both parties to where they need to be. So it actually comes in super handy. And yeah, it's great. It's been a good fit.
Yeah. The other thing I will say about education, what I found, and it's unfortunate, our educators should get paid way more than they do.
100%.
Right? Like
yes, they are heroes.
Yeah, they're heroes. And so because unfortunately the pay isn't what it should be, oftentimes you'll find people in that industry with a deep passion for what they do.
Correct.
And I think that passion for educating and helping and kind of coaching, mentoring, all of that really plays well to real estate. You know, especially in an industry where you're not getting a salary. Right. And so there are times where it's extremely difficult to keep going. I think it's made out to be where like realtors make all this money, and they can, and a lot of them do.
There's opportunity.
There's opportunity. Sure. The flip side, though, is that there might be a few months where there's no money.
There's no guarantee.
There's no guarantee. And I think, has it been helpful to be able to draw from that passion in times where it's been challenging for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think knowing that, I am loving what I'm doing, and I am able to hit different marks, and both financially and personally. I don't work a 9 to 5. People are like, whoa, how, are you working now? I'm like, yes, I'm always working, but I'm also always not working. I don't have specific hours, and it's really nice to have that freedom to put as much into it as I want to, and always kind of be held accountable for that with your clients and stuff like that. But yeah, no, it's been a great shift. It kind of came out of nowhere, and I never thought this is what I would be doing now in a million years. Yeah.
Say you'd be great at this, or did you?
Yeah, the realtor, when I moved to Denver, I reconnected with an old family friend of ours who's a realtor here, who's just, a wonderful person to mentor and friend, Andrew Abrams. I'll give him the shout out here. And we were grew up together. And so he was my realtor, and when I was looking for a house, I was like, oh, this is fun, I could do this. And he's like, I've been looking for someone to work with me, you're hired. No, I'm not serious. He's like, I am. And so it kind of fell in my lap, and the more I started thinking about it, the more I thought, you know what, this could be a good shift. And I always have education to fall back on if this goes awry, but why not throw myself into this? And I was lucky to have an incredible mentor who, for the first couple of years, I just learned. You were talking about how there's no salary in real estate, and that's entirely true. But the way I got into it, I was lucky enough to have a little bit of a cushion, and he was, I was working for him for the first couple of years. So I was able to just learn and not sink or swim, and not just dive into clients without any knowledge of what I was doing, which I think a lot of realtors take their test and then are working with clients, and the test has nothing to do with real estate, to be honest. And
it's a bunch of laws and regulations.
Right. Great to know, super important to know, you need to know it, and that's not how transactions go down.
No.
And so I got several years of just learning, and without having to worry about the commission, worry about the next paycheck, and then I was able to build my business the way I wanted to.
Which is so fortunate, because and I think because there's a lot of people listening to this that are maybe brand new into real estate, or they might be listening to this in a job going, man, should I get into real estate? Or just, I have that entrepreneurial itch. What role did it play for you? Like, how critical was it that you had the ability to learn? Like, if you would have gone straight into working with clients, do you think you would have made it this far this quickly?
I don't think so, no. I don't know. Who knows, right? Like, in the end, I think it was a great fit for me. So would I have gotten here eventually? Maybe. Would I have been as beneficial to my clients? Probably not. Like, could I put on a show? Yeah, for sure. But, I think taking your time and taking the ability, like, there's two sides to it, because you're not gonna get clients and be successful if you're not throwing yourself into it.
Sure.
So, like, although completely necessary and completely understandable, that doing two fully different things is not probably going to get you where you need to be long term. That being said, it's really impossible if you don't have some sort of cushion or way around it to just throw yourself all into real estate without anything else.
So what I'm hearing is you would recommend having some type of cushion. Like if you were talking to somebody that was thinking about getting in,
yeah,
how long of a cushion would you recommend they have?
That's such a good question. It's hard to say, because my partner has a 9-to-5, monthly paycheck, W-2. If all else fails, we would be okay. And that's a huge safety net, and allowed me to take some risks that I might not have been able to take otherwise, and have paid off big time.
So for the person that's like, yeah, but Kelly, I don't have that.
Yeah.
Right? It's just me.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
But I know that what I'm doing won't last forever.
You hustle, and you are door knocking, and you are calling, and you are putting everything into it, and you'll get there, and you'll hopefully get there fast, but it's not going to be easy by any means. And go through a really good training program. Be with a brokerage that's going to support you in the training and in that mentorship that I had, because knowledge is power, and you're not going to be successful if you're just going out and getting clients to pay the bills. You're going to be successful if you're bringing benefit to those clients, because they're going to refer you. And that's where you get successful, is when you build referrals and spheres. It's not the first client that's going to make you money. It's that client, and then the one they refer, and the one they refer, and the one they refer. Next thing you know, you've got a whole sphere of people. But you have to know what you're doing to get the referrals.
When you first, okay, it's day one, right? If you can think back to day one, what that looked like, right? Were there any, first of all, were there any preconceived notions you had about real estate, where once you were in it for a few months, you're like, whoa, that's not what I thought?
All of them.
Yeah, okay.
It is not at all what I thought. It's so much harder than I ever thought. There's so many different things involved from in the behind the scenes. When I was working with an agent, all I see is them showing houses, and then showing up for the inspection, and everything goes smooth. That's a good realtor, because you don't see all this stuff behind the scenes, like constant communication with the other agents, with the sellers, with the lenders, with the appraisal, with there's 100 places where it can go wrong, with renovations and fixes and inspection items that need to be plumbers for plumbing. There's so many behind the scenes things that you're constantly coordinating, and fires to be put out, which is what ties back into education for me. Is that part feels very familiar and something I really enjoy. Not having problems and not having my clients go through bad stuff, but solving them. Getting to the other side and finding solutions that make everybody happy. And that's something where it was a surprise, and something that I really enjoy about real estate.
So many people always ask, well, but how do you do it, right? What are the steps? What are the daily habits? And it's no, it's who. It's who you have to become.
And who your relationships. I mean, it's all about the relationships for me. And building those relationships, and not just with your client, but with the agents. Because if you don't have a relationship, it's going to be tense for both sides, and
absolutely
nobody's going to be happy.
Absolutely.
So
it's a dogfight.
It's not how, it's who, and the relationships you build, and the psychology behind it. Yeah.
So back to day one, right?
Yeah.
Have you always been somebody because I don't see your day to day. I've never worked alongside of you, but
Yeah.
you appear to be somebody that really has their shit together. You've got structure to your business.
Fooling you well.
I always say the same thing. How many times I've heard, man, you guys have everything so dialed in, and we're like, really?
Yeah.
Like, but you're always getting better, right?
Yeah,
And so I think
yeah.
perception is everything, and behind the scenes, you're right. That is what makes a great agent.
Yeah.
That's what makes a great lender. You don't necessarily see the 13 things that could cause the deal to go sideways
Right.
that you're extinguishing right throughout the process, but. Talk to us a little bit about your daily habits and, do you have any sort of structure set up with your business in terms of, prospecting versus working on transactions? Like, what does that look like?
I should have a lot more. That's for sure. Yes and no. I mean, I have my systems because I had worked for somebody else for the first couple of years, and I was in charge of doing all of that for him. It really helped me stay organized.
Context.
Yeah, I had context, and I knew what worked and what didn't work for me. So like, my Google Calendar is my everything. It's up in my screen all the time. Everything I has to do is somehow thrown into the Google Calendar. It's not a to-do list. It's like, okay, I have this hour blocked off. These are the 4 things that are going to get done, and they're on my Google Calendar. If they don't get done in that hour that I had it blocked off because something else comes up, something else always comes up, I move it. I move it to another time that's open until it gets done, and obviously get done the things that are more time urgent first, so that when stuff comes up, those, at least the time sensitive ones, are taken care of. But yeah, just kind of, first and foremost to me is building and maintaining my sphere, my contacts, because that's why I'm in it, is I like being around people. And
Do you have any sort of system with that, where, like, you reach out to them every so often, or is it more organic, like, oh, I saw this and it made me think of you, so I'm gonna reach out and say hi?
yeah, it ends up being more organic. Sometimes I'll go through these continuing ed classes, and they'll give these great ideas of the touch points, 10 touches a day, and I'll be great at it for a week. I'll have it all scheduled out. And it feels disingenuous to me, and I'm just not good at forced touches, I guess is the way to do it. And as much as I see benefit in that, and I think it works for people, and it could work for me if I really worked the systems, it doesn't work for me because it doesn't feel right. The genuineness and the honesty and the genuine relationships, I think, is what has made me successful and drawn people to me, and vice versa. And I tend to do that more when I'm just like, this really made me think of you. How are your kids? Like, oh, I ran into so-and-so today, made me think of you. What's going on? It's not so much of like, oh, I'm scheduled to talk to so-and-so at this time. But there's pros and cons to both. Some more systems keeps you accountable, and I tend to be really good for a little bit at these even natural ones, and then fall off the wagon when things get busy. And I could be more consistent, for sure.
I think it has been one of the most difficult things for me, because, and I don't know if this is just human nature in general, but I think for the most people that get into real estate, it's either freedom and flexibility, or it's, hey, I have the ability to really make an impact, make more money, provide for my family, all things that I think are great.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So inherently, there's almost this element of like, we're these progressive individuals that want to grow, right? And so on one hand, you want to scale, and in order to scale, it's like you got to have systems, but I agree with you. Like, if you get too systematized, people feel that, and you need the relationship. So where I've struggled is balancing both, right? Yeah, because it's like...
Or the consistency of one or the other. Like, you can have these systems, but if you're not doing them consistently, same with the organic. If you're just organically doing it, but if you're not consistently doing it, it's not going to hit any marks.
And I think where the systems have really helped a lot with me is, when you're in sales, this is just being a human being, but like, there are days where you don't feel great.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you're not turned on. You're not ready to go and sell, right? Like
Right.
there are just days that are challenging emotionally.
Yeah.
And so for me, what's really helped is having some of those systems in place. I was never a systems guy. I was just flying by the seat of my pants.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was very organic, which was great. And I think if you talk to agents that have worked with me, especially like 5+ years ago,
Yeah.
I think it was very relational. But then I'm like, okay, but to grow, like I have to put some structure in place.
Yeah.
And where that's really helped me is on the days where I just don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
Right? The
Yeah.
days where I'm like, I'm struggling, I'm like, well, yeah, but I have a themed work day today. Right? Like I know today what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if all I do is that, it was a successful day. Because I know tomorrow it's a different themed work day.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, but I go back and forth with it, right? And then as you grow a team, it's like, how do you input yourself at the point of sale, make an impact, be relational, but also, have your team handle the stuff that's not your highest and best use of time.
For sure. And that they may be better at.
Yeah.
That's what teams are for, right?
I mean, people laugh.
each other
Like,
up.
yeah, I haven't taken an application in like 6 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, now, I'll take it over the phone with somebody where I know what questions to ask, and very quickly I know, hey, this is going to be a struggle with the debt income ratio or qualifying or something. Like, I can do that because I've done it for 20 years, right? But where I've had to actually take the application, if you think about it,
else can do it.
it's not really your highest and best use of time.
Right.
So, talk to us a little bit about, okay, so how do you manage all this with kids? Because I have a couple kids.
Yeah. I mean, I can
So
ask you this.
that's a
thing.
real thing, right?
It's a real thing. It's
Yeah.
a real thing. And it is hard.
And I think when you don't have, we've talked about this, but when you don't have kids, it's like, you kind of just, you just don't get it. And, I'm not shitting on anybody that doesn't have kids, but once you have them, you're like, man.
It is a different ball game.
Yeah. And I think, it's like, it's a challenge. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, and I think this is both the perfect profession for somebody with kids and the hardest.
Sure.
Because once again, you're always working and you're also never working. So, for instance, my kids are homesick from school because kids are always homesick from school. Or during COVID when they were home all the time. My husband's in meetings 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And it's structured and it's consistent. And I end up being in charge of the kids because I have that flexibility. But then it's like, I'm working too, just in a very different way. And it can be really challenging because there is no on-off switch.
Do you have to create like a schedule where, like, when your kids are at, school, you have that time where you can work on your business?
Yeah.
So are you scheduling that in your calendar?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
okay, I'm not with the kids now, so this is when I'm making calls, or this is when I can do showings.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
To the best of my ability. But then again, showings come up when showings come up. They're on weekends. They're in evenings. That's when people can see houses. So that's when, we play defense and see who and how to best navigate it. But I'm lucky enough to have a partner who is able to help out with those times and does. Make it work and be able to give my attention when I can and shut off. I think that's something that as parents, I don't know about you, but I'm always working on. I find that too often I'm trying to do everything at once. Be with the kids, send out emails, take a call, get the exercise in, do it all at once, and I'm not doing it all justice. I'm not doing any of it well. Rather than doing that, I try to, when I'm with my kids, be with my kids. Doesn't always work, it's a lot of talk. But I try to be a little bit more present and actually play with them for at least, 5 or 10 minutes untethered to the technologies, to the work. Sometimes I'm better, sometimes I'm not. And same with work. If I'm with my kids, put them in front of the TV, whatever it takes, so I can actually focus on my work for a few minutes and not be doing half and half. Because to me, that doesn't do either a good job
Gosh, and
justice.
and you feel the difference, right? Like when you're
focused,
when you're present on whatever you're doing, man, I don't know what it is. I mean, it's got to be an element of society and just kind of where things have evolved, but technology and social media and, think about it, where it's this instantaneous gratification kind of society. It's like, I don't know, do you remember the old TV dinners?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like 60 seconds and you got a Salisbury steak that's done.
Right.
And that's too long.
Right.
Like you're freaking out because it's taking too long. You're staring at the countdown. Same thing on a plane, right? It's like the plane lands, the seat goes off, and stands up, and then waits for 15 minutes, right?
Yeah.
But something I've had to talk through with my wife quite a bit is like, hey, it's not about how much time.
Quality.
It's really the quality of the time. Like, you could spend 30 minutes a day with your kids, which seems like, man, that's nothing.
But
if you don't have a cell phone, a computer, if you are totally present and locked in with your kids 100%, and you feel, when you're that way, you feel that connection with your kids, with people in general.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about anything. You're not distracted.
Not multitasking.
And man, that goes so much further. I find when I do that with my kids, it's like, I can see them like melting into me. Like, I love you, Dad.
Yeah. It's magic. It's magic.
It's
hard.
So
it's not
hard
easy.
to do.
It's not easy, but it's magic when you
and
do it. Same with work. Yeah, it's true. You're like, oh, I'm actually focused on one thing for a while and I'm doing a good job at it. Yeah.
That's why, so I've worked into my calendar like chunks, time blocks of specific activities.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So like, in other words, if I'm filming several podcasts, I'm not doing one in the morning, noon, at night.
Right.
No, I'm doing it back to back to back because I'm in the flow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, with this, it takes a lot of energy to do this, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to prospecting,
Yeah.
right, or having a buyer presentation, if I can schedule those back to back, my mind is thinking about the same thing for that 2-hour block, but I might talk to 4 people in that 2-hour block, and I'm going to be more effective than if I schedule one today, one tomorrow, one Friday, and then same thing with prospecting, right? If I can get a vision for what I want to talk about, I'm able to call 20 people back to back. I'm just going to be more impactful. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's where you have to have that time, right? Getting those big chunks of time is hard with you have kids and inspections and the stuff that comes up in the active transactions to me. But yeah, absolutely. I think if that is a possibility and if you can schedule your day, it makes sense. I try to, like you said, time block a little bit to the best of my ability. But yeah.
What do you think the biggest challenges that you have with running your life and business? You're married, right? There's everything that you try to squeeze in. Right? Like, where do you feel the wheels tend to fall off? And
I think it's going back to what we just spoke about, of like trying to do too much at the same time and trying to fit it all in instead of devote attention where it needs to be at that moment. And that's when I start to get a little, my head starts to spin, kids start to act out, like it all starts to fall apart when you're not giving it the direct attention. So being more intentional, I guess that's the word. Intentional of where you're putting your time and energy.
What do you think your biggest takeaway was when working with Andrew? If you think back, like if there was one, I mean, you've had several, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Is there anything that stands out where you're like, man, like if every agent could learn that, or for me, and if I didn't learn that, that would have really been difficult.
I think what he saw in me is what I would say was the takeaway, the way he runs his business, being so relationship forward. I think it was kind of like chicken and the egg a little bit, that I watched him do that, and how successful he was in doing that. And it was such a good fit for me that I think kind of fed off of each other. But yeah, just those relationships and building the relationships and
which is like special that that's what you got from him, because I can tell you with real estate investors, and I know Andrew's business model and works with a lot of clients on investments, flips, for instance, on a flip company. To be sort of a business person that's running an investment portfolio and flipping properties, it's rare that you find somebody that has that's not just numbers driven and metrics driven, right? So like to hear you say that you picked up from him the value of the relationship is like, that's an amazing thing.
Yeah, just shows and how to build those relationships and maintain them. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about, I want to dive into prospecting a little bit. Right? I think right now we're in a place in the industry, I don't know if you would disagree, but you know, it's no secret rates are super high.
Yeah.
Right? It seems like it's just been more difficult in general with finding clients that want to buy. Now there's this whole layer where it's like you really have to educate them on the benefit of buying now, even though rates are 7 to 8%, right? So talk to us a little bit about your just philosophy on prospecting and anything you want to share with the audience on what works for you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, you know, I hate to keep being a broken record, but like relationships, I tend to be very social. I get involved in my kids' school. I do ceramics. I, have.
You have to meet my wife, by the way.
Yeah.
I remember the ceramics.
Yeah.
She's really into that too.
Oh, really? Oh, that's so great. Yeah, that'd be great. But just being in front of people all the time. And that's what I meant a lot about what I took from Andrew, because I think he was the same way and he saw that in me. And I think that was what the initial draw was. But just constantly being around people and making relationships. And they're not all going to turn into clients. Matter of fact, 90% of them don't. But all it takes is one. And and meanwhile, you're making a ton of great relationships. So win-win.
Yeah.
And you know.
So you do like events?
I do events. I usually do about 4 to 6 events a year.
Okay.
Quarterly happy hours.
Okay.
I have a big pumpkin patch in the fall. It's my big, most fun event where I get 3 pallets of pumpkins. Although it's growing, I might need a 4th pallet next year. And just lay them out in my yard, and people come all day long, and we have food and drinks, and they pick out pumpkins. There's decorating. It's really fun. I have
Who do you invite to that?
Everybody I know and their mother.
Do you use like a spreadsheet or a database?
Yeah, I use
email
I use a CRM, a customer relationship, and I send it to anybody who I have email for, and then I reach out to everybody I know in my sphere personally, whether it's a text or a call or whatever, and just remind them and see how to use that as a point to genuinely. It's not a mass text. I literally go through my phone. One by one, and I'm like, oh, I haven't talked to them in forever. I wonder how that went, and I use that as a reason to kind of check in, but it's not a mass text.
Your entire cell phone?
Yeah. Anybody who lives in Colorado, it takes me. I do it for like an hour a day for a couple days.
When you save a contact, do you do anything to identify so it's easier to search that group?
Yes and no. I could be more organized about that. Again, I'm a little bit more of I'm an organic person.
Yeah.
I could use some more.
Which, by the way, my guess is you don't think of yourself as a salesperson.
No, I definitely. No. I'm not a salesperson.
Which is why you're successful. It's so ironic, right? Because a lot of people listening to this are like, "Yeah, but Derek, I'm not a salesperson.
Right.
I don't know if this is for me." And what I found is,
as soon as I get too salesy, it doesn't.
I don't think it works for anybody.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't work for me. I mean, I'm constantly, and I love sales. Yeah. I am passionate about it. It's changed my life. I think it's something I'm proud of.
Yeah.
At the same time, like I've gotta watch myself, because sometimes I can be not intentionally, like my heart's in the right place.
Sure.
But like I'm big on scripting, right? On knowing your message.
I love that.
On all these things, but
Not me.
yeah. Well,
I'm a very like you said before, fly by the seat of your pants, which has its pros and its cons, and it works for some people. It does not work for other people. And whatever works for you is what works for you.
Yeah.
Doesn't work for me. Where were we?
Well, we're talking about prospecting, about some of the things that you do to prospect. We're talking about events,
right?
The pumpkin patch.
Oh, the salesiness.
Salesiness.
I'll walk into a house, and the first thing I do is point out everything wrong with it.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to feel like I'm trying to get them to buy a house. I'm not there to get them to buy a house. I'm there to facilitate them purchasing the house that's right for them. I don't want anybody to walk into something that they're not going to be happy with.
How do you feel though about a situation where you feel like you need to almost protect your client against themselves, right? Like
that's education, and that's hearing, again, that goes back to the psychology of hearing what it is their concerns are. And speaking to their concerns in a way that's getting them to think about it. You're not telling them they're wrong.
For sure.
Especially not if there's wrong and there's right.
You're asking good questions.
Right. And if their concerns are valid, then I'm going to honor that. Right. I'm not going to push them into something that's not my concern if it's a concern for them. But if their concerns aren't necessarily valid, my point is to educate them on, I provide education, let them make the decisions. I'm not there to protect them against themselves. I'm there to help facilitate something that's going to make them happy. So in some respect, I'm just providing information and giving them stuff that they wouldn't think about necessarily, but I'm not going to protect them against themselves if that's going to make them feel down the road that they made a bad decision, whether or not it was or not. Even if they're wrong, if that's not going to make them feel good, it's not the right thing for them.
Yeah.
And we get there. We get to the right thing.
Sure. Yeah. It's just uncovering that, and oftentimes
listening.
It's listening. By the way, we always hear that, right? Listen, you gotta listen. And it's so important. Like my team is constantly like, Derek, you gotta listen more, right? Because I have a tendency to talk a lot. I think that comes from a place of passion for me. Like I'm genuinely like, this can change your life. Right. Real estate can change your life. And so there's a passion behind it. But what I found is anytime I slow down and I just listen to them, I just ask them questions. They usually get there on their own. They get there on their own. Or it's so much easier to lead them in a direction where they can make a better decision. Right. Okay, so I've got a scenario, and I'm curious your how you think about this. Okay. Yeah. It's to elaborate on the protect your client against themselves kind of situation. So, so let's say you believe that the market is going to significantly appreciate in the next 12 months. That's what you believe. Yep. Let's just pretend, even if it's not, let's pretend that's what you believe. And I do. You do, yeah, same. And then you have a situation where you've been working with a client for 6 months. Okay, they've been looking at property, you've written offers already, they've been beat out by some other competitive offers, and they see a property and they say, Kelly, this is the one. This is our dream house. We're willing to do whatever it takes to get it. And you say, well, that's great, because I just got off the phone with the listing agent. There's 7 other offers on this property. Yeah. You've got people offering $50,000 over. How do you navigate a situation like that where, on one hand, somebody might say, well, Derek, protecting them is pulling comps and educating them on the true value of the property and maybe not really letting them go crazy with the offer price. But then you have another agent or somebody else that says, well, yeah, but protecting them really is getting the house that they just told you is their dream house. Yeah. Willing to do whatever it takes, even if that means them offering way more than what the house is actually worth in the moment.
At the moment. Yeah. That's a tough one, and I think it's really specific to the situation. I don't think there's a blanket yes or no here. I think it depends on their financial situation. If you're going to put them house poor, and even if it does, the house value goes significantly up in the next 12 months, and you are going to give them this huge opportunity. If you truly believe that, that may not happen. And if they are able to float it for now, in the next 12 months, in the next 24 months, in the next 3 years, great, push, go. This is what they want. They can make it happen. There's no reason to hold them back and to not shoot for the stars, even if it's over what it's worth now. If they can, afford the appraisal gap, everything like that.
And I think a lot of it is like we've been talking about, is just educating them on both scenarios.
Right.
Right?
Educating them.
Yes.
Let them make
Making
final
them
decision.
aware of every angle.
Yes.
One thing that sometimes gets to me is when an agent doesn't make them aware of every angle.
Right.
Right? They have their own agenda or their own belief, and they're pushing that belief on the client.
Right. For me, it's all about listening, and it's all about their personal situation. If this is at the very tippy top of their budget already, and going another, 20, 30,000 over, even if it's the right move long term, but I know it's going to put them in a really risky, uncomfortable spot for now. And if things don't change, that's going to put them, then I'm going to just advise them on that is a huge risk, and let them make the decision ultimately. But I'm going to go as hard as we can, given their situation, for what they want. But yeah.
So
If that makes sense.
No,
That was like a very wishy-washy.
No, I follow you.
Yes and no.
Well,
answer.
you're right. It is different for everybody. It's the same thing in lending, right? Like, there are oftentimes people, they'll call us just, hey, what is your interest rate?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people have been sold by the media and companies with deep pockets that have the ability to spend a lot of money on marketing, that the way to determine the lender is by the interest rate they're offering. Now, that might be one way. The challenge with that, though, is if you're interviewing multiple lenders before you're under contract, or you've got a client that's like, yeah, my lease is up in 3 months, but what's your rate? Well, it's not really a fair assessment, because those rates are going to change,
Right.
most likely.
100%,
right?
yeah.
And I would listen. In 22 years of doing this, I've never met one client that has had the identical financial situation, identical long and short-term goals, and the identical market.
Right.
It's all different. It's so specific. And yet big companies have really tried to commoditize the industry. And I think it's why it'll be one of the last things to change is the lending.
Yeah.
Now, we're already seeing AI come out and provide solutions on the back end, like once a client's under contract, eliminating the need for a processor, underwriter,
Right.
Which,
Good and bad,
Yeah,
right?
good and bad, right?
Like most technology.
But I think when it comes to originating the loan, I think you'll start to see two versions appear. One will be a version where it's a specific, like, cookie cutter client. We're talking the 800 FICO score, 20+% down, conforming loan amount, W-2 on the job for 10 years. Like, assets are above and beyond what they actually need for down payment. So you take that type of person, and I believe there will be the ability to just do it all on your phone, and it's done in 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
But that's like 10% of the buyer pool.
And even that person could use some,
Reassurance, guidance.
not only that, but like strategy.
Yeah.
Like there's more to it than, does it make sense to put down 20%? Does it make sense to put down more? Does it make sense to, refinance something? There's still counseling and strategizing and long-term, short-term goals that need to be thought of that aren't going to be AI available. Yeah.
Where do you think we just had the recent NAR settlement become public, and that's still evolving kind of, and I sort of have sensed this over the last couple of years that in general, the industry just, it feels different to me than it did a decade ago.
Okay.
Right? Like something is changing, and I can't specifically put my finger on it, but I feel like something is changing. Where do you think the future of the industry is headed?
You know, I think at least with the NAR settlement, it's going to weed out a lot of the people who are dotting I's and crossing T's and not doing much else. And it's going to provide a big open spot for the people who are actually providing value to their clients.
You think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
We'll see how it plays out. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's going to change as much as we think it does. It's going to, especially not here in Colorado where we've always had buyer agency. That's a big part of it. And, you know, the nationwide news has been talking about, you know, required buyer agency and all of these giant changes, which are huge for 37 of the 50 states. But Colorado is one of the 13 that's always required buyer agency. And so that's not changing. So to me, the only thing really changing is how we're educating our clients about compensation. You know, they were always negotiable, always have been, always will be. You could say, I'm not going to pay a buyer's agent. You could have then, and you still can. It's not in your best interest. And that wasn't then, and it isn't now. So I think, and same for buyers, you know, buyers are going to be working with agents, and they're going to want agents who are bringing them value to protecting them on the biggest purchase of their life. They can and always have been able to negotiate or go to a Redfin or a Zillow and pay a 1%. And there's always been deals to be had. You could pay less. You always could. You go straight to a seller and do a for sale by owner. Nobody required you to pay 5.6% commission. Never had to. It was in your best interest because there was value, and that's not changed. I think the biggest challenge we're going to come across is re-educating people, because now we're hearing all this news about the settlement and that sellers don't have to pay. They never did. Or buyers are now responsible for paying their agent. Yes and no.
I saw this with builders not long ago, where I don't know if you remember, but a few years ago rates were 3%, and all of a sudden builders were like, we're not going to pay agents. We'll pay them 1%.
Exactly.
Right? Because we're going to sell our product with or without you is sort of the mentality, right? But ironically, do you see how the sentiment now with builders has changed?
Totally.
Now they need agents to bring clients to the property. I think the same will happen with sellers. The sellers that are like, well, I'm not going to pay, right? I think they're going to want to pay when they realize that it's giving them exposure to more buyers and more offers that ultimately is what's getting the property sold.
Exactly. So take, for instance, a seller says, I'm not going to pay a buyer's agent commission. You then have a buyer's agent who's working with a buyer. They have a buyer's agreement saying they're going to get paid a certain amount. They go and find out this property is not offering a commission. They're going to say, hey, do you want to go see this property? If we go under contract, you're going to owe me this amount of money. They're going to say, no, I'm not going to go see it. That's going to hurt the seller.
Totally.
And the buyer. Because they, the seller gets the money for proceeds, and they have a good lump sum of cash to pay it. In the end, it's the same amount. It's the money, whether it comes from off the sale price or whatever. It all comes from somewhere. Same with lending, whether it's a 2-1 buy down. It's all there. It's just a matter of when and how. And if a buyer is paying the buyer's agent, they're going to be able to bring less to the table, and they're not going to be able to pay a down payment necessarily. So I think it'll end up washing out to be about the same, but it's going to take some re-education.
I totally agree. It's funny, like, when I'm talking to a client that says, well, hey, Derek, this is your rate, and this other lender is willing to do it for this, okay, and that rate's lower than mine. What I share with people is that everybody in our industry plays in the same sandbox, right? Like, we're all pricing it off of the 10-year bond yield.
Right.
Margins are basically the same for everybody out there. So if you have two lenders that are charging two very different interest rates, all that means is one lender is shrinking their margin so that that loan officer isn't making as much money.
Right.
Now, if you were to migrate this to like a doctor, okay, and you've got a heart issue, okay, and you need to have surgery done on your heart, and you have two choices. You have the choice to work with the doctor that's at the clinic making, $60,000 a year, or you could hire an incredible heart surgeon where there won't be any complications based on his experience and track record, but it's going to cost a lot more to get it, right?
Right.
There's, in my opinion, when you're dealing with one of the largest investments of your entire life, do you really want to pay as little as possible to someone? Or would you, and think about the guy that's sitting at, Chase or Wells Fargo or a big bank, right? They don't really have the same incentive as a lender that specializes in the mortgage process.
Yeah.
They're making a salary and they're getting paid, a couple bucks for every closed transaction. Now, they also have 200 loan applications on their desk, right? So the available nights and weekends, are they being an advocate for the client? Probably not, because they're not making any more or less money if your client goes under contract, if they hit dates and deadlines, if it closes, because you're likely a good agent's not referring their client to one of those lenders in the first place anyway, so they don't have a relationship to uphold, right? And I equate it to a similar situation that, like, if you're going to get a listing and the seller tells you, well, Kelly, you're fantastic, but we also met with this, discount agent that's only going to charge us 1%.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you agree that it's a similar comparison?
I do. I think it's a great comparison, and I think it goes back to value of I get that all the time about somebody saying I'm going to go to somebody who's doing it for 1%, and I do one of two things depending on what it is. Either I find a way to explain my value and why I'm worth it, or I let them go because they're not going to value me, and I want to work with people who want to work with me and who see my value, and that's okay. Not everybody needs what I'm going to offer, and I'm okay with that, like.
I think there's a place for both.
Right? I do. I definitely do. And it's up to, again, education. I'm not pushing anybody to work with me because that's not going to be good for anybody either if it's not a good fit. But I'm going to educate them on what I'm going to provide. And if that's in their best interest, which I like to think often it is, then they're going to choose that. And if they, are pretty... what I'm offering is not what they need and they want the discount, or they have that's all they need, cut and dry, go under contract. It's going to be different, but good for them. That's fine. Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah. It's a great attitude to have, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has that attitude, especially if they're, like if they don't make money, they're not paying their mortgage.
But I think when you are pushing people into something they're not comfortable with, you're not going to be successful anyway.
Absolutely.
So it's again, chicken and the egg,
we
right?
call it commission breath.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody wants that.
Right.
Nobody wants to feel pushed. People do want to be led, though, is what I found.
Yeah, I agree with educated. Maybe not led. It depends on the person. And I think that goes back to listening of like, what's their type? Some people are numbers. They just want information. They don't want the hand holding. They don't need being led. They already know what they want. They just need information. And those people I talk to very differently than my people who need assurance, reassurance, and constant, I read what people need and I try to provide that to the best of my ability and being the most genuine I can and protecting them. But yeah, I'm not going to go into a numbers person and tell them about, all of the neighborhood camaraderie that they're going to get in this house
Yeah, right.
because that's not providing value to them.
No.
Yeah.
Are you big on personality types? Have you studied that?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
fascinating,
It's
isn't it?
fascinating and it's really helpful in my job.
So there's the show you should listen to. We have a guy, his name's Manesh, coming onto the show, and he's grown a business that's global now, but he basically travels and educates and teaches people like at a high level in a very deep way the DISC profile assessment.
Yeah.
And he's just a character, man.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
So anyway, we're gonna have him on the show.
That'll
He's
be a
gonna
good
break
one.
it down,
That'll
right?
be a
He's
good
gonna.
one,
Yeah. But well, listen. Thank you so much.
That's been a
for
blast.
coming to the show.
This is not painful at all.
No, good.
No.
It was fun,
Yeah.
and I hope you come back. And
Yeah.
I just really appreciate you being here and sharing your perspective. One last thing, for anybody that's thinking about getting into real estate,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them?
I would say have a good mentor and give it your all. It can be really good, but you have to be invested. You have to get through the humps, which they come. Yeah. Well, thanks, Eric.
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
It's been
for
fun.
coming.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Every time that I see a limit, what? I push right past it. Don't care if you got here first, the one to win is the last one standing. Say my life is like luck, nah, I had to plan it. The way I work is out of this earth. I can feel the momentum. Need it all, no fractions. Dream it, then I gotta have it in the booth like Tom Cruise.